Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here for this conversation about how theater and theater makers approach their use of language when in conversation with communities of interest in their audiences. We hope you'll make use of the chat to uplift and share your own take on the ideas that emerge. Please also use the session Q&A section that you can click under the chat headers to ask questions of the panelists, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. And of course, if you have any technical needs throughout the session, please tag at Team NNPN in the event or the session chat. We will sort you out at that point. With that, I guess it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this conversation, Nicole Palmietto, a director and immersive theater maker who is currently wrapping up her producer residency at Horizon Theater Company. She also founded a theater company called Sound Stages in Atlanta, and that is wrapping up its journey as well. Welcome, Nicole. I also have the pleasure and the honor to introduce India Nicole Burton, who is a playwright, director, performer, and educator, who also holds the role of artistic associate at Cleveland Public Theater and is an alumni of the Producer in Residence program. And Bonnie Butkus, who, in addition to being a fundraiser and an organizer, also serves as managing director of Miramax Repertory Theater in Lowell, Massachusetts. So Nicole, India, Bonnie, thank you for being with us, sharing your insights. I'll see you on the chat and on the socials, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Jordana, and thank you to Bonnie and India for joining me for this conversation today. I do want to share that I am coming to you today from the land of the Muskogee Creek people, also known as Atlanta, Georgia. I would love to get started by talking about the wonderful work that Miramax and CPT are already doing to serve communities within your cities. Bonnie, would you mind kicking us off by sharing a little about Miramax's work for Lowell's Cambodian community, as well as your amazing new resident theater company, Free Soil Arts Collective?
Thank you so much. I didn't know I would have to start. So Lowell, which is a gateway city about 45 minutes from Boston, has one of the largest Cambodian American communities in the country. And over the span of 2 different artistic directors, we have been intentionally working to reflect that community, amplify that community, and open our doors and make our space more welcoming for that community. And so we've done that in a number of ways. We produced a play by Vichette Chum, who's an amazing playwright and actor, now based in New York City. And it was a one-person show about, based on his real life, learning Cambodian and preparing to go back to learning Khmer, excuse me, and preparing to go back to Cambodia with his family. And that was sort of the beginning of our journey. And so Vichette came back to perform. We talked a lot about how important it is to have representation on our stages, so that when our student groups were coming in, those Cambodian American students were actually seeing an actor. Shouldn't be surprising, but it is a Cambodian American actor on our stages. And then we very recently commissioned another play from Vichette, and around that there will be different work that we're doing. We've already done some poetry residence with a local poet and activist with our high school. The new play that he wrote is about a poet, so in part. So we're kind of building off of that. And I think what we're trying to do is just always thread together different pieces that are amplifying the Cambodian American story in Lowell. I think in a different way, our work with Free Soil Arts Collective, that's a theater company that's dedicated to artists of color, particularly Black artists. And they were a group that we had already offered. We just said, hey, what resources can we throw your way to help you amplify your work? And so we offered free rehearsal space. And, there's all these things that we had that we were like, we can share. We're not using the space. Let's share it out. And then gave them, really discounted space to perform. And out of that relationship grew our company, our first company in residence. And so I think one of the things that's really interesting about that is that Lowell itself has a really small Black population, but those stories have not been told. And so Free Soil is really working on telling those stories. And I think we can help amplify that, with the end goal of our theater becoming a very different looking organization and not being a white theater.
And I love the focus on relationships there too. India, do you want to share about CPT's resident ensembles, specifically Teatro Público and Masra?
Hey, friends, if you want to throw another question Bonnie's way while I recommend that India, you just leave and come back in. There you go.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jordana.
That seems to resolve the audio issues every time. All right, I'm getting out of here.
Technology is fun. So Bonnie, maybe, oh, there's India. You're still muted. Okay. All right. Well, when she comes back, we will turn the conversation back to her. But Bonnie, could we talk a little more about these relationships and how you got to the places where you could have a company in residence and where you could, bring back a playwright multiple times to write plays specifically for the Cambodian community? How have you been able to gain the trust of your communities and develop these programs?
I feel uncomfortable taking so much time, but I will keep going, and then we will yield a lot of time back to India.
We will.
So we really have gone into all of our partnerships, and I would say this is a staff-wide. It's not me, it's me and the marketing director and our producer and our artistic director. We really intentionally gone in there without a sales mentality. It's not just we're going to sell tickets. Like it never can start from that place for us. It's sort of a work friendship in terms of us showing up for other folks' festivals and events, us trying to amplify and give resources to, financial or in kind, and really being present for each other's work and starting in smaller ways. So I think that not having that sales mentality and then just continuing to show up over and over again instead of saying, oh, no, we did this one Cambodian show, we only got 10 people to show up, I guess that's a bust. That's just the start. And I also don't think that, I think numbers are important, but I think it might be 10 years before our audience is more fully reflective. But we have to commit and keep working towards that. And I've seen in other theater communities, there have been shows produced that were aimed at a specific community, but no existing relationship was there. And then folks didn't show up and people wondered, well, why didn't they come? I guess we're not going to do that again. So trying to take that long view and just come back and come back and come back and not just make it about the show. We've done sort of pre-show events with Cambodian artists. We've done, talkbacks with Cambodian artists. We've sent Cambodian playwrights and actors out into the Cambodian community. So I'm going to pause because I really want to make sure that there's time for India.
Yes, and we will definitely come back to this. And thank you for that. Pointing out how it can't be a sales mentality. It can't just be about the show, because that's such a great tie back to transcending the transactional. But welcome back, India. And glad that technology is working for you now. So would you, to go back to the first question, would you be willing to tell us about CPT's resident ensembles?
Yeah, so we have two. Can you hear me? Well,
yes.
Can you hear me good?
Yes.
Okay, great. We have two resident ensembles, Teatro Público and Masra a la Arabi. They are a Latinx and Arabic speaking branch created for Latinx and Arabic individuals to do their work. by and for their lived experience in culture. And as we know, these cultures, their experiences vary. As we know, there are various cultures that speak Arabic and Spanish. However, in Teatro, we focus specifically on the diaspora of Spanish-speaking individuals whose heritage derives from South America. And Teatro is pretty much self-governed as they choose their own shows, they choose their own directors. They have a lot of, authority in what they do, as opposed to Masra, which is a newer branch at the theater, which is ran by Raymond Bobgin, who is our executive artistic director, who is of Armenian descent. And a lot of people don't know that, but he's of Armenian descent. And they devise theater. They don't do a lot of scripted work. They devise their work. So yeah, and we're working constantly with the communities to get people to come in and see their work. Masra is a newer company, so a lot of people don't know this either, but Michigan has the largest concentrated area of Arabic individuals. So Masra tours to Michigan, and we open our space. They have free space, they have meetings and things here, and we make sure that we try to cater to their needs and wants when they're in the space.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Can you talk a little bit about how those relationships formed, and how you built up the trust in order to serve those communities?
Yeah, I think because I wasn't here when Teatro Público was started. I think what Raymond did was he went out to the communities, and Cleveland Public Theater went out into the communities and talked to the leaders of the Latinx community. And they had meetings before they even started any rehearsals, or before they even went in, before they even talked about starting a company. And then the Latinx company, or the Latinx individuals, said that they wanted a company. And I think the way that we've gained their trust is by giving them the authority to do their own work. Cleveland Public Theater are the producers, but Teatro Público, they choose their own work. They choose their own directors. They have a lot of say-so in what they do. And Masra Ala Arabi, the individuals who are in that branch, a lot of them aren't typical theater individuals. So they rely a lot on Raymond to come in and devise pieces with them. However, like I said, we go into their communities. We go to Michigan a lot to work in those communities and talk a lot to the leaders of those of the organizations out there. So I think that's how we gain trust with those branches, is by just going out and simply talking to them and asking them what they need. And also catering to their specific cultural needs. So Masra, they like to eat food and celebrate before the show. So we make sure that we supply food and things like that, and also in the rehearsal rooms, because for different individuals they expect certain things. So we just make sure that we're talking to them and asking them what they need simply.
I love how you're able to distill it into such a simple thing. Of both of you have said, we went to them and we asked what they needed. And I love that. And I think that's such a simple thing that we can all do to build trust. In terms of specifically communicating and language and messaging, how and when and how often do you communicate with communities of interest, the communities that you're serving within your cities and states and the neighboring states? And how do those communities get to speak back to you as well? And India, do you want to start?
Sure. Cleveland Public Theater serves a large, population of different cultures and things like that. I think for the African American community, a lot of the individuals who come through this theater are from our education programs. And a lot of the students that are in those education programs, they're with us from the ages of 5 to 17. And so they bring their families into the organizations to see plays, and then they get comfortable and things like that. And then just offering the space for specific needs. If people need to have meetings, if people need to have, we did a wedding here. We're open, and we offer our spaces to individuals in the community to do what they need to do. So yeah, and we also have artist meetings. So I also want to just talk about our community of artists and how we gain their trust as well. CPT is an organization that champions new work. So we have a lot of new play development series where we prioritize the work of local artists. So in our development series, we can have someone who's doing their first play or written their first play or devised their first play, and someone who was a little bit more seasoned. And I believe that that's how we gain our artist trust, is by giving them a space to come in and to speak in an organization to tell their own, individual stories.
Has championing those local artists built up your audience community as well?
It's really interesting because our audience is a non-traditional, it's a non-traditional theater audience. And it's basically white people. So right now what we're doing is we're trying to figure out how we can go out and get different cultural groups to come in to see our performances, especially because our performances are so they are so culturally open, so it's, yeah. So our audiences, we're working on our audiences right now. That's something that we're going in and trying to investigate right now. So yeah.
Great. Bonnie, do you want to share about Miramax community partners or how you communicate with the communities you serve and how they communicate back with you?
I feel like this is an evolving activity for us, that we're always trying to improve and learning as we go. But I think part of the communication is just how we amplify each other's work. And it does sound simplistic, but when our folks, our partners are doing an event or have an open call for classes that are trying to get people to register in the census, we amplify their posts almost every week. So just, saying, hey, we're here, and then trying to show up at their events, which I mentioned earlier. I'm sorry, I sort of lost the thread a little bit.
Do you want to share, when we had our pre-meeting, you were telling Indy and I about your community partners, individuals that you really rely on to help build trust and how those relationships have developed over time. And I'd love to dig deeper into that.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate in some ways to live in a small city. So you see your partners everywhere, and we're a city very focused on events. So it's been a weird year. And then we also, we share a lot of trustees. So there's good cross-pollination, and lots of conversations with one-on-one conversations in person pre-COVID that are happening all the time. And I think what our responsibility is to carry those forward, and after the conversation happens or there's an idea or a spark, that then we move it forward. And then a lot of our really successful partnerships happened because we already had this existing relationship. So at some point we might talk about our Lowell offering play that lifts up the story of the Lowell Mill Girls. Probably wouldn't have gone quite as far in terms of partnership if we didn't already have an existing relationship with our local historic park. So I think it's getting to know people one-on-one, having those overlapping communities, and then being relentless about amplifying and following up.
Hello. That's wonderful. And what I hear both of you saying is that these relationships take time. You're building them over years and years with, with individuals or with the students who come through your doors for, 13 plus years of their educational life, and how it really is that mutual relationship, that back and forth. And I think that's wonderful to amplify and say. So I'd love to talk a little bit about how you, the work that your theaters do both go out into the community, but you're also bringing people in, and some of the communities that you're serving are cultures that have their own languages. And, so often we take for granted that everyone who walks through our door is going to speak English or feel comfortable with English. But you're reaching out to cultures that speak Spanish, Arabic, Khmer. How are your theaters, from wayfinding to marketing to the play itself, how are you making sure that the audiences who walk through your door all feel comfortable for that specific show, but also just any time for the community events as well, the weddings? Bonnie, do you want to start?
So we are not doing as much of this as I would like, but what we would like to do that we talked about in our pre-call was take a page from our community health center. So when you walk into our community health center, they have a sign. It has, I think, 27 different languages. And Lowell is one of those cities that has just had wave after wave after wave of immigrants. So there are many languages spoken. When they print something or they do something on their website, it is listed in every language. And I feel like that's what we aspire to do in the meantime, as we try to work our way there. When we do shows that have a real thematic tie into the Cambodian community. So when we did Vichat Chum's one-man show, Kim Yoom, when we did Laura Nee's Cambodian rock band, we had our curtain speech in English and Khmer. And we did like a summary of the program in Khmer. And we did flyers in Khmer and took out ads in the local Khmer paper. And none of these are, I'm sure everyone's thought of these, but just to try and maintain some consistency around that and to kind of keep the door propped open. I do think inclusivity expands in many directions. And, we are doing open captioning. Again, that is, we're a LART D, we're a small theater. So that's a bigger move for us. And we're trying to explore some of that accessibility. I think the wayfinding question is really important and something we need to think about. So I think we're doing some small things, but we could do more.
Yeah, we have wayfinders. So our restroom signs are they all have Arabic and Spanish signs along with English signage. What I love about when we do Teatro Público shows is that they are always done in the language that it's written in. And the company chooses those plays. So if it's a play that's done in Spanish, then they do them in Spanish. And then us as the audience, we have to then look at subtitles. And what I love about that is that it allows us to empathize more with individuals who are in America who do not speak English. In Masra, they do everything in English primarily because it's being devised by Raymond. But some of the stuff that they do, the songs that they sing on stage are Arabic traditional songs, and then it's just the people who come and see it. Myself, I have to live with it. You know what I'm saying? Like if they're singing a song in Arabic, I have to live with it. Just like sometimes they have to live with people speaking English around them and they don't understand what people are saying. Also, we hire translators and things like that. CPT also tries to hire individuals who are bilingual, who speak Spanish and English. And that's the way that we try to definitely make sure that language is accessible here in the space, is, you know, making sure that if a show is chosen by Teatro Público, we don't say we need to translate this play. This is the play that you chose, so this is the play that we're going to do, and we're going to, you know, figure it out.
Yeah, that's great. I love that the wayfinding signs are just always there in multiple languages. That really does a lot for just making people feel welcome at any time. Yes, the decentering in English. So thank you for sharing that. And I love your story about being there and having to read the subtitles, because it really does, you know, put English speakers in a different perspective and gives you a new empathy for sure. So we've touched on this a little bit already, but what do you both see as something that you have yet to accomplish? And it's not a failing, it's a wish list. It's the goal for the future. What are your goals for the future for your theater, and what steps, even if they're small, are you taking now to start breaking down and reaching those goals? Either one of you can start.
Well, one of the things that we're working on right now, because a lot of our staff are all artists. So, you know, our associate artistic director is an actress. I'm a director. All of our people on staff are, you know, they work artistically. So we direct some of the shows that are here. We are acting in some of the shows that are here. And a lot of the times we're learning that sometimes the work environment, the hostile or rigor of our work environment can trickle down into rehearsals. So we're trying to work to figure out how we can eliminate that. And one of those things that we do is we come up with a cultural, our values and our cultural values. And we made a chart, and we put together a task force to create this chart. And on this chart, it has all of the things that Cleveland Public Theater values. And we want to not only use these values in rehearsals, but we also want to use them in our space. And we've also created an anti-racist statement. I don't like calling it a statement because it's more like a constitution for us, because it's a long written out document where we've asked people in the community to come in and help us write it, staff members, board members, and it's like a 3-page statement about the things that we're going to put into place to make sure that we can keep this our theater, our organization, anti-racist, to try to dismantle white supremacy. I don't know if that answered the question. But
I think it did. Thank you. Oh, I'm echoing. Bonnie, do you want to share?
Sure. I feel like we have a lot of things on the list. But similarly to what India was talking about, we now have an EDI statement as part of our job descriptions, and that's part of trying to shift everyone's thought process into being more into focusing on how we can be an anti-racist organization. So just foregrounding that idea that we are committed to these ideals, and this is part of your job going forward, is, I think, going to help us along the way. And obviously, I don't know that we'll ever be finished being an anti-racist organization, but that is the goal. And then I think we just, like many white theaters, we have some big challenges around the who our staff is, what identities they bear, our trustees and our volunteers. I think that we're building great community relationships, but I think if you walk into the theater and everyone looks like one thing, it's probably not very welcoming. So, you know, like many regional theaters, that is something that we need to work on. And then again, picking up on something that India said, we are trying to really, we're not doing unpaid internships, we're changing the work schedule. You know, we're getting our job descriptions out really early so they have time to percolate out into our networks, and we have time to chat with some people so that we don't have dominant identities in those job descriptions. I guess my personal goal is to run a theater, or my personal goal is to step aside and have somebody who doesn't look like me run the theater. But I really want a theater that looks like our community. That's my personal goal.
Nicole, I think we're talking a lot about language, and we were talking a lot about race, but I also want to mention the idea of CPT's other values of dismantling transphobia and homophobia and fatsism and things like that, because those are things that we also need to bring to light, that there are other things that are happening in the world that we need to try to dismantle. So we have a non-binary restroom here. We like to invite people to come and work in our space who may not have opportunities to work in other spaces because of their what they identify as their gender or their sexuality. So that's another thing that we try to do here is Cleveland Public Theater, with the emphasis on the public, is we serve the people. And that is what we're trying to do is serve everyone. And not everyone is Black, or not everyone is, so we serve everyone.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, India, and sharing what CPT is already doing and just the necessity to make sure that everyone, no matter what everyone looks like or how everyone identifies, is welcome. Thank you. Do we have any questions? It doesn't look like we have questions. So there was one more thing that we talked about a little bit, but I wanted to circle back to of how do your communities speak back to you? Oh, sorry. You're muted. There's one question. Where?
Question from Anne Morgan.
Thank you. Okay. Anne's question is, re-asking communities what they need. A frequent need seems to be space. What are other ways your companies support your communities that might translate to itinerant companies or independent artists?
I think, we started with our company in residence and just opening our space to them because there's so many hours out of any year that we're not using it. I think we would be willing to continue that practice in our theater. The only thing that we bump up against, and this would be a budget problem we have to solve, is that we don't have a ton of staff. So, space use requires some staffing. So I think sometimes that's what small theaters run up against, or maybe big theaters as well, is that they want to be more open and supportive, but they don't have the staff to support that. So that's something that, just like we're all starting to build EDI money into our budget, this might be another way to think about service is, do you have the staff to support opening your space up more? So I guess to Anne's question, that is a place where I'm like, we have space, here it is, let's use it.
Well, I can say personally, because I'm working on a play right now, and in the play that I'm working on, it has to be all women of color. And in our city, we don't have a lot of all women of color, and we don't have a lot of women of color designers. So what we have done is we've invited an installation artist, African-American woman installation artist, and we have hired someone to come in to train her so that we can incubate and train people of color to be designers in the city. Space is a huge thing, but we try to do other things also by supporting restaurants in our area. So we put them in our programs. We host our season reveals at these restaurants and things like that. And we invite the community to come in to have free food and to talk and just to see what's going on at our theater. So, yeah.
Thank you. All right, I'm reloading it, but I don't see any more questions.
You know what, I can tack on to what we were saying in response to Anne's question. One of the other things that we do is we have actor housing. So we have, we've housed people, actors, directors, different independent artists who needed space. So that, you know, just continue. And COVID sort of forced us to think about that space in a different way. Like, we have all this space, how can we help people out and support our community? So that's another thing that we've done, just continually trying to look at what we have that we can offer.
Thank you for sharing that. And as you're offering these things to your community or building programming, what are the ways that your community, your artists, the people that you're serving are able to speak back to you and let you know, yeah, that was exactly what we needed, or next time it should be this, this, and this?
That's really interesting, because what we do is we have an annual artist meeting, which was, we had one this morning, actually. I just came off of that into here. And another thing that we like to do at CPT is we are very, very, very open and transparent. So what we do in these meetings is we talk about our budget. We ask them, are there things that they want or need? Do they need more workshops? Do they want, you know, more space? Or, you know, is there a certain type of show that they want to see? And today we opened up the floor and we talked about our cultural values and some of the things that we feel like we have failed on in the past. And a lot of people were very honest about some of the things that they've experienced here. So at this moment, we are really trying to take accountability for some of the damage that we have done in the past. And we're being very transparent and allowing people to come in and speak, and just listening without saying anything, and taking it in and saying, okay, and we're going to do better. And then going from there and trying to figure out how to be better.
Hi. I think, I'm echoing. I think that one thing that we're trying to be more transparent and make people feel comfortable with responding. I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to try again. Okay. We're trying to really create that culture of transparency and openness. And fortunately, I'm in my artistic director who has already done that. And then being responsive to complaints and issues and challenges. So, you know, there's always some things lurking in dark corners of your theater. We're really trying to make sure that those don't get ignored, even if it's not a perfect solution, that we at least acknowledge and apologize, and try to do better. So I think that is becoming a core value for us. And then there's a lot of one-on-one conversations that happen. We don't have like a formal mechanism, although I am fascinated by this artist meeting, India. So.
Yeah, it's really great. We do it every year. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing both of those. So we only have about 2 minutes left, but I do want to honor this this last second question that we have. Are either of you working with the disabled community, and if so, how? So you can speak pretty briefly to that. That would be great.
I would say we are working with the disabled community, but we don't make a big deal out of it, because I don't think they want us to make a big deal out of it. They want to just be seen as people in the space. So we do, every year at Entry Point, we have a young woman who comes in who's in a wheelchair, and she writes and she produces. And we try to make sure that this space is open and accessible for her. So we have elevators and things like that. We have accessible people. We have lifts in some of the places where there's stairs and we can't put ramps on and things like that. And we also have people who have disorders like, I don't want to say disorders, but who have they may be on the spectrum, you know what I mean? And they come in and they do work here, and we champion them, and we're behind them, and we want them to work as well. So we are, and we also work with a group called Whitehaven, which is a group of individuals who are in a halfway house. So a lot of them have disabilities and things like that.
So I think. Hi. Okay, that's better. Try again. Okay. So I'll put my answer in the chat.
Thank you for that, Bonnie, and India. And I believe that we are at time.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you and be and share space with y'all. I just wanted to pop on and say that all of the things we talked about today were absolutely incredible, uplifting and amplifying those community events and organizations, slowing down and taking the time to create authentic mutual relationship building, decentralizing English, skill sharing. Bless. Thank you, India, Nicole, and Bonnie. Find out more about these folks by clicking the links in their speaker profiles. Search for them on the new Play Exchange or give them a good old-fashioned Google. And next up, a 15-minute break and 2 more sessions starting at 10 minutes past the hour to choose between will it be symbiotic partnerships or digital programming? Only you will decide. Don't think too hard because you can catch the recordings of any sessions that you miss. But thank you, all of you wonderful humans on this stage. Thank you for joining us.